Welcome back, Honors. So, yeah, today in class we got into the stuff about Athens and Sparta, and I know y'all didn't like the fact that we didn't have a very long warm-up, but you can get over yourself because I don't really care. But the big thing about it is today we're talking about how Athens and Sparta are going to transition their way from the archaic period into the classical period, right? And a big part of that has to do with disseminating the problem with what they call the Persian threat, all right? So anyway, now, a couple of little background things. Y'all know a lot of stuff about the Persians already. Like, for example, somebody tell me really, really fast, who is the big leader, the big-time leader of the Persians? Bang, good job, Madison Marks. That is correct, Cyrus the Great, right? So, somebody tell me really quick, were the Persians really all that bad? Boom, good job, Nick. No, they weren't. They were actually very tolerant. And somebody tell me really fast, who was the last big, great ruler of Persia? Bang, Joey and Sean Martin, I heard you. Xerxes, right? And we're going to talk about them a little bit today. So, first and foremost, the reason why y'all are going to be a little aggravated about this, but it's going to be funny tomorrow when I actually catch some kids that weren't doing what they're supposed to do and they muted me, all right? First and foremost, underneath Persian Wars overview, you should cross out Persian Wars. I hate this presentation. I made this thing when I was a first-year teacher and I didn't know any better, right? So, Persian Wars were not wars at all, all right? Right? Weren't wars at all. It's one revolt and two invasions, right? We'll talk about why that is as we get to it, okay? But let's go ahead and get started a little bit, and then we'll actually catch up with that stuff a little bit later. So, despite their cultural ties, the Greek city-states were often in conflict with one another, right? We talked about today how, like, Athens and Sparta, they're very, 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 very different people. So they had really no business affiliating themselves with each other or protecting each other's interests, right? So they were often in conflict with one another. However, the threat of the powerful Persian Empire is going to unite the city-states together to dispel a common enemy. Now, later on, you would think that they would be tight for like ever. Like, oh, bro, I got your back, and we won. We beat those Persians, and they smell, and I don't like them. So, but not really. It's going to lead to another war much later on, all right? Foreshadowing. All right, anyway, but let's get going. So, remember, this is not a war. Don't write First Persian War. Write the Ionian Revolt. I-O-N-I-A-N Revolt in 546 BC, right? So, first and foremost, you know what? I think I might need to move my face a little bit. So how about we grab this, and then we move me like right down here. Getting shifty, right? So anyway, now, the cause was the Persian Empire was conquering some of these Greek colonies, right? So remember, the Greeks had been colonizing during the Archaic period for a long time. They conquered small parts of Italy. They conquered big chunks of the northern region above Athens in the Aegean Sea. They conquered, colonized northern Africa and other little places like that. We'll talk about that a little bit today again. But they conquered, Persia began to try and conquer the small Greek colony of Ionia, right? Now, the response after they were conquered was the Ionians were refusing to pay tribute and they began to rebel, okay? Because the Ionians saw themselves as Greeks. They didn't see themselves as Persians. But the irony is they just would have shut up and paid their taxes like everybody wanted them to, and probably would have been no problem. Now, here's the sketchy part, though. Secretly, the Athenians had been sending ships and weapons and goods and money and weapons to try and fight the Persian threat. So Athens was not man enough to go fight this war on their own. They tried to see if the Ionians could win it on their own. Well, here's the thing. Ionia, Greek colony. Persia, biggest mother flipping empire that the world had ever seen. Who's going to win? You. Who's going to win? All right? Exactly, right? The result of the First Persian... The result of the Ionian Revolt in 546 BC was Darius I of Persia crushed that rebellion. Totally crushed it, leaving Athens alone. However, right? So he crushes the rebellion, but we know it's not over yet, okay? We know it's not over yet. There's no way it is. That's going to lead directly in to the First Persian invasion, all right? Some of you are like, I can't read what's down under your face. I don't care. You don't need to write it anyway because it's not an actual thing. It's an invasion, right? The real big thing why I'm getting into this is because a revolt was suppressed. An invasion is different from a war, right? Now, an invasion is Persia trying to take over this area. A war is like it would be kind of like in class if I was to run up to like Sam's desk and like smack all the stuff off of it and be like, this is mine now. Now you have to pay me taxes, right? So that's an invasion, okay? I'm taking over his area. A war would be much more like if I looked at, let me think, if I looked at Olivia and was like, hey, Olivia, in like 3 days, I'm going to come and fight you. And then we fought. And then like a day later, she was like, I beat you. You stink. Oh, my God, you're so weak. And then we signed a peace treaty, right? A war is a very different constructed thing than an invasion is, okay? But the reason why this first invasion actually happened was the revenge for Athenian interference. Apparently, Darius had a servant who really bugged him about stuff. You ever have a friend that just doesn't let you forget anything? Well, Darius had a servant like that, and apparently every day came up and whispered to him, Master, remember the Athenians. Remember them. Every day a servant said this to King Darius, right? So, Darius is going to install the first Persian invasion, right? Now, the biggest and most important battle of the first Persian invasion was the Battle of Marathon, right? The outnumbered Greeks, they were outnumbered almost 10 to 1, right? There were like 10,000 Persians and 1,000 Greeks, right? They are going to defeat Greece, the Greeks are going to defeat the Persians due to just a really good strategy, right? So, they're actually going to defeat, you know what, come here. They're actually going to defeat them. All right, so they're going to defeat them based off this, right? So, can you see the board? All right, now, so what had happened was there was a beach right here. So we got like a little water, and then they're like, here's a little Persian boat. You know what I mean? Beep, boop. There you go. So actually what they were trying to do, though, this beach was surrounded by a large area of elevated ground, okay? So when the Persians began to land, they began to set their forces up like so, okay? Trying to raid the elevated ground, where the Athenians were all up here, and they were severely outnumbered, okay? Whoop, wait, so... Come on, mirrored reflection. There we go. So the Athenians were severely outnumbered, right? So as the Persians began to retreat, the Athenians decided to charge directly into the Persian lines, splitting them apart into several different units, and they killed 6,400 of them, while the Athenians only actually lost about 194. Some of you are like, how do we know that? Was somebody counting bodies? Well, probably, yeah. All right, anyway, so it was a major, major victory. And they actually ended up storming straight in through the lines, and only 192 of them died, and 6,000 Persians died. And this man is going to be the one that carries the message. His name is Pheidippides, all right? So Pheidippides is going to actually carry the message of victory home to Athens. He ran 26 miles, the distance of a marathon, right? Oh, Battle of Marathon. Oh, my God. Tell me history ain't relevant. What's up? All right, anyway, now, so he ran 26 miles, and he got back and said, Nike! Rejoice, we have conquered, because Nike is actually the Greek embodiment of victory in any god, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit tomorrow. So, Nike, and then he died. He just goes, rejoice, and then dies, right? So, that's hilarious. Now, anyway, so, getting forward, though. The results, though, of this first Persian invasion has to do with the fact that, oh, wait, look, I'm on a boat. All right, anyway, now, so, check it out. The results... Athens is going to build a fleet of faster and stronger ships to try and prepare for any other attack. And remember, Athens is the smarter of the two, so Athens is going to become dominant in their naval fleet, right? Athens is also going to ask the other city-states to form the very first alliance that the Greeks had ever seen, right? So Athens was successful in dispelling the Persian threat, right? So they did it on their own. It was very, very impressive. So the really cool thing about an Athenian vessel, actually, right down here, so underneath the water, first of all, it's man-powered. It has multiple sails, which is very, very different from the Minoan ships, right? It has a giant battering ram underneath it. And so they would ram into another Persian ship and go, and actually pop a hole in it and actually sink it. Also, the front is wedge-shaped. So they weren't as worried about boarding vessels as they were actually sinking them, right? So anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep on going. Let's keep going. All right, anyway, now, so very first alliance that the Greek had ever seen, but it wasn't set up quite yet. So then there's going to be the second Persian invasion. And this is where the son of Darius, Xerxes, tries to pick up where his father left off. This is the second Persian invasion. Remember, Persian War, not accurate. This is in 480 BC, okay? The cause of this was that Persians wanted revenge, and they came after Athens by land and by sea. Now remember, there is a dominant land power, that's the Spartans, but the Athenians were actually the dominant naval fleet. The big major battle, though, of course, was Battle of Thermopylae. Let me get to that in a second. But on their way through to get to the Battle of Thermopylae, this is the... Come here. There we go. Grab it. No. Grab it. Grab it. Come here. Okay, we're just going to have to zoom in on this a little bit. Sorry if this float's a little bit longer than normal, but hey, you're learning stuff. There we go. So, this is the Persian invasions, right? This is Xerxes' armies in 480 BC, and it's coming around, coming around. That's the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC. And as you can see, 490 BC, in this first Persian invasion, that's the Battle of Marathon. And this is the Strait of Salamis. We'll talk about that. But this is the major battle during the third Persian invasion. But on their way down to get to Athens, they are going to burn it to the ground. Athens was completely destroyed in the second invasion by Persia, okay? So, completely destroyed. Like, the Parthenon was destroyed. The Parthenon that you know is the second version of it, actually. So the Battle of Thermopylae, though, was led by a guy named King Leonidas. Now, all of you have seen 300, I'm sure. And if you haven't, I suggest it. It's actually a fun movie, even though it's ridiculously historically inaccurate. So, anyway, Battle of Thermopylae, led by King Leonidas, was 6,000 Spartans against 200,000 Persians. Now, the Spartans are going to eventually lose, but they're going to deal a major blow to the Persians and actually kill, I think it was something like almost 10 to 1 of their their numbers. So all the Spartans ended up dying, but they took at least 10 Persians along with them. So they massively devastated the Persian force that is going to eventually run out of steam. You can't expect to win an entire war with only 200,000 guys not replenishing your ranks, right? So anyway, but at the Battle of Thermopylae, really cool fun fact though, the Spartans used the phalanx and actually was just, and just like yoked their way through a bunch of Persians. And then also King Leonidas, fun fact, I know that Gerard Butler plays him in the 300 movie. He was 60 years old when he actually was fighting that war. He was 60 years old, so kind of funny that he was like trying to stab Persians and stuff. So, in the second Persian invasion, though, there were also a couple other major battles. The Strait of Salamis was a naval battle when the Persian fleet was sunk and forced to retreat. And then the Battle of Plataea a year later was when the final Persian forces were defeated, right? So, Persia had one win when they suppressed the Ionian Revolt. But both times when they tried to invade Greece, they failed miserably. All right, so they lost most of the battles that they were actually involved in. And a lot of this has to do with the fact of just flat-out Greek ingenuity, right? Like the ideas that the Greeks had come up with that are actually very successful for them. So, let's keep going though. Now, the results of the second Persian invasion, Athens is going to increase its status among the city-states. Athens also wants to build a permanent alliance with the city-states to protect them from future invasion, right? So, but they want to be in charge of it, okay? Now remember, the two dominant city-states are Athens and Sparta. Now remember, Sparta has its own government, does not believe in democracy, believes in warrior-like culture, believes in taking 7-year-old kids and throw them in the military. Sparta is not very happy about this and they refuse to join, right? So, but Athens is going to give this thing a name and they're going to call it the Delian. Right? So the Delian League, so important, like star this, circle it, highlight it, whatever. The Delian League was the very first military alliance that history had ever really seen. When I'm talking about formal alliance that has payments and dues and things like that, right? So the alliance was headed up by Pericles of Athens, my number 3 top person in all of history. We'll talk about him tomorrow. So Pericles was used to defend from further invasion, and he created this big new thing called the Delian League. And it had over 150 Greek city-states in it. Collected dues from all of its members, but the big problem is Athens is going to use that money to rebuild their city, not beef up the army. And you had to be a democracy to be in the Delian League. Sparta is lividly PO'd about this situation because they know that Athens is eventually going to abuse their power. So, boom! We're going to stop there for today, right? I know this is a longer one, but whatever. Like I said, I was like drawing stuff, trying to keep you entertained the best I could. And if you didn't like it, then I don't really care because it's going to be on test. So, all right, anyway, now, but I will talk to you guys later on. So we talked about the Delian League. We talked about the Persian invasions. They're not wars at all. We talked about the Ionian Revolt. We went very in-depth with all that stuff. So I will keep talking to y'all tomorrow, honors. See you in the morning, all right? Have a great evening.